The market was loud with alien voices, ships landing, and traders shouting. Humans rarely walked here, but he had come to buy supplies for his small workshop. He kept his head low, trying not to draw attention, because humans were not fully trusted in this colony. Most aliens saw humans as strong but dangerous, tools to use, not friends to keep. He was about to leave when he felt something strange. A small hand touched his arm from behind, trembling, weak, and cold. He turned and saw her, an alien girl with pale skin and glowing eyes, no taller than his shoulder. Her clothes were torn, and her face carried both fear and hope. She looked like she had been running from something, or someone. Human, she whispered, her voice shaking like a leaf in the wind. Can you do this to me from behind? The word struck him with shock. His heart jumped, and he froze. Did he hear her right? What was she asking? Around them, the crowd moved, but no one paid attention, at least not yet. He lowered his voice. What do you mean? She turned her back to him slowly, pulling aside the thin fabric of her cloak, and then he saw it. Heavy chains, black metal, biting into her skin. The cruel lock rested between her shoulder blades, a place only someone behind her could reach. Her voice broke as she whispered again, only you can break it, only a human is strong enough. His stomach tightened. This was dangerous. If he touched her chains, the masters who owned her would notice. They would not forgive him. They would call him a thief, a criminal, maybe even kill him. He had lived quietly for months, keeping out of trouble, but now trouble had found him. The girl's voice cracked. Please. I cannot take it anymore. Her eyes were wet, and her body shook, as if she was ready to collapse. No one else dared to help her, because in this market slaves were property, not people, and yet He had chosen him, a stranger, a human. Why him? He wondered. Maybe she had seen something in his eyes, something no one else carried. Maybe she felt he was different, not cruel like the others. His chest grew heavy with the weight of her trust. He whispered back, if I do this, your masters will hunt me. She nodded without hesitation. I know. Her voice became stronger, as if her life depended on this moment. I will serve you, human. I will belong to you forever. If you free me now. The word sent a chill through him. He had never asked for a slave, never wanted one, but her tone was not only desperation, it was a vow, a promise that came from her soul. He could feel the choice pulling him in two directions. One path was safety, walk away, let her suffer. The other was danger, chaos, maybe death, but also something more. Her hands gripped his sleeve, small and trembling. Please, she begged, from behind. You must do it now. Every second felt longer than a lifetime. The sound of footsteps nearby grew louder, alien guards moving through the crowd. If they saw this, it would already be too late. He swallowed hard, his pulse racing, his hand reaching out despite his fear. Her chains glimmered in the dim light, waiting for his touch, and as he placed his hand on the cold metal, she gasped, not in pain, but in hope. It was the first human touch she had ever felt, and it changed everything. The alley was quiet now. The sound of the guards fading into the distance. The human still had his hand on the girl's shoulder, steady and warm. For a moment, she stood frozen, her glowing eyes wide. No one had ever touched her without cruelty. No one had ever touched her without pain. Her breath came fast, uneven, her chest rising and falling like she had run a long race. She whispered, you touched me. As if the words themselves were unreal, the human pulled his hand back quickly, guilt flashing in his eyes. I only wanted to calm you, he said, his voice rough but soft at the same time. But she shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. No, she said, her voice trembling, no one has ever touched me like that, not with kindness, not with care. Her words cut deep into his chest. He realized then how much cruelty she had suffered, how even the smallest gesture of comfort was new to her. She turned, slowly pulling her cloak aside, revealing the chains again. Please, she whispered, touch the lock again. Try once more, I beg you. Her back shook as she waited, her small frame tense with fear and hope. The human hesitated, his heart racing, because every touch meant danger, every attempt meant risk. Still, he stepped closer, his hand hovering over the black steel. The chains were heavy, the lock thick, but this time he noticed something else. Where the lock met her skin, there were glowing etchings, strange alien marks that pulsed faintly. They were not only chains, they were symbols of ownership, written into her very body. His jaw tightened, anger rising. They had not only trapped her body, they had carved their power into her very flesh. The girl shivered, whispering, "Do it, please, even if it hurts, I do not care." Her trust in him was like fire, burning, dangerous, but impossible to ignore. He reached out slowly, his fingers brushing against the lock. Her body jolted, a sharp gasp escaping her lips, not because of pain, but because of the warmth of his hand. For years she had known only cold iron, whips, and chains. Now, for the first time, she felt human warmth. It broke something inside her, and healed something at the same time. Her knees buckled slightly, but she steadied herself against the wall. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "I thought I was nothing, but you make me feel alive." The human swallowed hard, his chest tight. He had not meant to give her hope, but his touch had done more than break chains. It had awakened her spirit. He pulled out his cutter again, sliding it against the lock. This time he pressed harder, fueled not only by strength but by anger at the cruelty she had suffered. The tool sparked, the lock groaned, but it still refused to break. The girl bit her lip, holding in a cry, refusing to show weakness. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the far side of the alley. The human froze, the cutter still pressed against the chain. Voices, rough and cruel, grew louder. The guards were returning. The girl turned quickly, her face pale, her voice trembling. "Not here, they will kill you if they see." He hid the cutter back inside his bag, his hand brushing her shoulder once more. Her body trembled at the touch, but she did not pull away. Instead she leaned closer, whispering, "That touch, it gives me strength, it tells me I am not alone." The human felt his chest twist, his resolve hardening. The guards passed by again, suspicious eyes scanning the street. The girl pressed against him, her small frame hidden beneath his cloak. The moment felt endless, danger hanging in the air. But when the guards finally left, she looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. "You are the first to touch me without chains," she whispered, her voice raw with emotion. Her hand rose slowly, trembling, as if unsure if she was allowed. Then she touched his arm, light as a feather, almost afraid. Her voice broke as she said, "If you free me, I will never leave your side." The human stood still, his heart pounding. Her words were more binding than any chain. For the first time, he realized this was not just about breaking metal, this was about breaking destiny, and rewriting both of their fates. The girl's chains still clung to her back, weak but not yet broken. The human's touch had given her hope, but hope came with a price, because in the shadows of the market, others had been watching, and the masters did not forgive. A loud voice cut through the noise of merchants and traders. "Where is she? The slave girl, bring her out." The guards marched forward, their armor clashing, their whips coiled and ready. People stepped aside quickly, afraid to be caught in their path. The girl's eyes widened in terror, her body trembling as she pressed closer to the human. "They know," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. "They know I came to you." The human's chest tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. He had wanted to stay silent, to avoid attention, but silence was no longer an option. The masters appeared at the front of the crowd, tall figures draped in dark robes. Their eyes glowed with cruel delight as they spotted her. "There she is," one of them hissed. "The worthless one dares to beg a human for freedom." Laughter rippled among them, sharp and merciless. The girl lowered her head, shame burning her cheeks. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "They will punish me, worse than before. They will make an example of me." Her fear was heavy, but the human could see something else in her eyes, a spark of defiance, lit by his touch. Refusing to die, one master stepped closer, his voice echoing like poison. "You think a human can save you?" he sneered. "Humans are tools, nothing more." He raised a whip, its edges glowing with cruel energy. The girl flinched, her knees shaking, ready for the strike, but the whip never landed. The human had stepped forward, his hand raised. His voice was steady, stronger than he felt inside. "Touch her, and you'll answer to me." Gasps spread through the crowd. A human standing against the masters was unthinkable, but there he was, his hood pulled back, his eyes blazing with fury. The masters froze for a moment, surprised by his boldness. Then their laughter returned, louder than before. "You dare to defy us?" one spat. "For a broken slave girl, she is nothing." The human's jaw clenched, his voice low but sharp. "She is not nothing. She is more alive than any of you." The crowd whispered, shocked by his words. The masters' faces twisted with rage, their voices thundering. then you will share her punishment. Human. The guards moved forward, weapons drawn, chains rattling. The girl grabbed his sleeve, her eyes filled with fear. You should run, she begged. They will kill you if you fight. But the human shook his head, his voice calm. They already marked me as their enemy. I will not run now. The guards surrounded them, the circle tightening. The human's breath slowed, his mind sharp. Every step he had taken led to this moment. He was no longer just a worker in a colony. He was a man standing against cruelty. The girl pressed closer, her trembling hand clutching his arm. Her voice cracked. Even if we die, thank you for touching me with kindness. Her words gave him strength, sharper than any blade. He would not let them take her without a fight. The masters raised their hands, signaling the guards. The crowd held its breath, the air heavy with fear and tension, and in that charged silence, the human stepped forward, ready. He was one man against many, but his fire was greater than their chains. The girl's glowing eyes locked on him, her voice, soft but fierce, whispered, "You are not just human, you are my only hope." And as the first guard lunged, the human clenched his fists. The battle had begun, and the masters would learn the cost of their wrath. And in the darkness of the broken bay, that hope was brighter than any light. The broken cargo bay was silent, but the silence was heavy. The human sat on the floor, his back against the wall, his breath still uneven from the chase. Beside him, the alien girl curled up, her glowing eyes reflecting faint light in the dark. Her chains rattled softly whenever she moved, like cruel reminders that freedom was still unfinished. For a long time, she did not speak. Then, slowly, she turned her face toward him, her voice quiet. "You risked your life for me," she whispered. "Why? You could have walked away. You could still walk away now." Her question hung in the air, sharp and true. The human looked at her, his jaw tight. "Because I couldn't," he said simply. "Because no one deserves chains like those." His words were plain, but the weight behind them was heavy. The girl's lips trembled, her tears threatening again. She leaned forward, bowing her head until her forehead nearly touched the ground. "I have nothing to give," she said, her voice shaking. "Nothing but myself." Her hands gripped the broken floor, her body trembling as she whispered, "I will serve you, human. I will be yours forever, if you will keep me safe." The human froze, her words striking him harder than any weapon. He had not asked for a servant. He had not wanted ownership, yet her voice carried no fear this time, only determination. It was not slavery she offered. It was choice, her first real choice. He reached forward, lifting her chin gently. Her glowing eyes met his, wet with tears but burning with promise. "You don't need to serve me," he said firmly. "I don't want a slave. I want you to be free." Her breath caught, her voice trembling. "Then let me serve you freely, not as a slave, but as yours by will." The words hung between them, delicate and dangerous. The human's chest tightened, his heart heaved. Why? For the first time, he realized this bond was more than survival. It was something deeper, something unspoken, something neither of them had ever known before. He nodded slowly, his voice quiet but strong. "Then we stand together," he said, "not as master and servant, but as partners." The girl gasped softly, as if no one had ever spoken such words to her. She pressed her hand against her chest, whispering, "Then this is my promise. I belong to you, but only because I choose to." The human leaned back, exhaling. Her vow burned in his heart, heavier than the threat of the masters outside. He had not only freed part of her chains, he had freed her spirit, and now he was bound, not by iron, but by the weight of her trust. The night outside grew colder, the sound of guards still echoing faintly. The girl shifted closer, her voice trembling. "They will come again, stronger, angrier. They will not stop." The human nodded, his eyes hard. "Then we don't stop either," he said. "We fight, and we survive." She rested her head lightly against his shoulder, her small frame trembling, but steadied by his presence. "I have lived my whole life with fear," she whispered, "but with you I feel safe." Her words were soft, but they carved deep into him. No one had ever relied on him like this before. The promise they shared was not spoken loudly, it was born in whispers, in tears, in shadows of chains and danger, but it was stronger than steel. The human knew it, and the girl felt it. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And outside, beyond the walls of the broken bay, the masters searched, furious and relentless. But in the darkness, a fragile flame had been lit, a promise. that would guide them through fire, chains, and blood. The chain was not broken yet, but the girl could feel it weakening. Every step she took beside the human felt different now. For the first time in years, her back did not feel like a prison, it felt like hope, but hope was dangerous here, more dangerous than chains. The market crowd grew thicker as they moved, merchants shouted, children ran, and the smell of strange spices filled the air. But beneath all that noise, whispers began to spread. Did you see it? One alien muttered, that slave girl, she touched a human, another hissed, she spoke to him, she never speaks to anyone. The human felt the eyes on him, sharp and suspicious. He pulled his hood lower, keeping his head down, but he knew the truth. Rumors traveled faster than ships, and if the masters heard even a whisper, both of them would be hunted. The girl stayed close, her glowing eyes darting nervously from shadow to shadow. She whispered, they are watching. They will not forgive this. Her voice shook, but there was something else in it too. Determination. She was tired of fear, tired of silence, and now she had someone to stand beside her. He guided her into a narrow side street, away from the main crowd. The walls were cracked, the air damp, the noise of the market fading behind them. Here, in the silence, he finally spoke. Why ask me? Why risk everything for one chance? Her steps slowed, her small hands clutching her cloak. She looked up at him, her voice breaking. Because if I stay, I will die a slave, she whispered, but if you free me, I can live, even if only for one day. Her words struck him deeper than he expected. She was not begging for life, she was begging for dignity. He leaned against the wall, his chest heavy. He had come here for simple supplies, to live quietly, to avoid trouble. He never wanted to get involved in alien politics, never wanted to fight anyone's battles. But now, with her trembling beside him, he realized there was no turning back. You know what this means, he said slowly. If I help you, if I break those chains, I will become their enemy. She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. Yes, but you will become my world. Her words burned in his heart, simple but impossible to ignore. The sound of boots echoed from the far end of the street. Two guards, tall and armored, walked past the opening. The girl froze, pressing against him, her small frame shaking. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder, whispering, stay calm, they will not see us. The guards paused, their alien eyes scanning the alley. For one tense moment, it felt like time itself held its breath. Then, finally, they moved on, their voices fading with the crowd. The girl exhaled sharply, her knees weak, her eyes wide with terror and relief. She turned to him, whispering quickly, they will search for me now, they will check every corner, every shadow. He looked at her, at the faint glimmer of hope fighting against the fear in her face. I should walk away, he muttered, I should let you go, save myself. But even as he said it, his hands clenched into fists. He knew he could not leave her, not after what she had shown him. She stepped closer, her voice soft but strong. Then stay with me, human. If we fall together. Her words were dangerous, her promise heavier than the chains she carried. And yet, in that broken alley, with guards hunting them, he felt a strange fire inside him, the fire of rebellion, the fire of choice. He had been silent long enough. If saving one fragile girl meant standing against the entire system, then so be it. He would take the risk, even if it cost him his life. The promise still echoed in the darkness of the broken bay, but promises did not stop boots and blades. Outside, the guards gathered, their shouts growing louder, their footsteps shaking the ground. The masters had called for every soldier near the docks, and they came like a storm. The human rose to his feet, gripping the wooden pole he had carried since the chase. His eyes scanned the shadows, his body tense. The alien girl looked up at him, her glowing eyes trembling with both fear and trust. They are here, she whispered. They will not let us go alive. The bay doors rattled as the guards pushed, the metal groaned, dust falling from the ceiling. The girl's hands clutched her chains, her voice cracking. I will not go back, she said fiercely, even if I must die here. The human placed his hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. You will not die, he said firmly, not while I breathe. She nodded, her tears falling, but her spirit burning brighter than before. For the first time in her life, she was not facing them alone. With a final crash, the bay doors split open. Dozens of guards poured inside, their whips glowing, their blades sharp. The masters stood behind them, cloaked in shadow, their cruel smiles twisting. there he is, one hissed, the foolish human who dares defy us. The human stepped forward, raising the pole like a sword. I am done watching you break lives, he shouted, his voice echoing in the bay. The crowd of enemies laughed, their voices harsh, but then the first guard charged, and the battle began. The pole cracked against armor, splinters flying. The human spun, striking again, his strength fueled by rage. A guard stumbled back, another fell to the ground. The girl gasped, watching him fight like a storm, but more came, surrounding him. One whip lashed across his arm, burning his skin. He gritted his teeth, refusing to fall. Another guard raised his blade toward the girl. Her eyes widened in terror, but before she could scream, the human blocked the strike, the pole shattering under the force. The weapon broke, but his fists did not. He slammed the guard back with raw human strength. The girl's chains rattled as she crawled to a fallen guard's weapon. Her hands shook as she lifted it, a small dagger glowing faintly. She had never held a weapon before, never been allowed, but tonight, she would not be helpless. When another guard lunged for the human, she cried out and drove the dagger forward. The blade pierced flesh. The guard staggered back, her eyes widened, her body trembling, but her voice fierce. I will not be your slave again, she shouted. The human turned, shock flashing across his face. She stood beside him now, dagger raised. Her chains rattled, but her spirit was unchained. Together, they faced the circle of enemies, side by side. The masters hissed in anger, their voices sharp. Kill the human, break the girl, they commanded, but fear crept into their words now, because the girl who had once bowed was standing, fighting. The battle raged, every strike echoing through the bay. The human's fists bled, his body burned with cuts, but he fought harder with each blow. The girl struck when she could, her fear turning into fire. At last, the surviving guards pulled back. The masters glared, their robes swirling. This is not the end, one snarled. We will hunt you to the edge of the stars. The human tightened his fists, standing tall despite his wounds. Beside him, the girl gripped the dagger tightly, her glowing eyes fixed on the masters, her voice steady. Then we will keep running, and keep fighting, until the stars belong to us. Her words rang like steel, stronger than chains. The masters retreated, their fury burning. The bay grew quiet again, filled only with their ragged breaths. The human looked at the girl, blood and dust marking them both, and for the first time, she smiled, a small, broken smile. You fought for me, she whispered, and I fought for you. The docks thundered with noise, engines roaring, guards shouting, chains clattering. The human and the alien girl slipped between towering cargo crates, their breaths sharp and fast. Every corner seemed dangerous, every shadow filled with enemies, but still, he pulled her forward, searching for one place, any place, to hide. They found it in the far corner, a broken cargo bay, its doors half fallen, its lights long dead. Dust and shadows filled the space, and the smell of rust lingered in the air. The human pushed the door wider, guiding her inside. Once they entered, he dragged the heavy metal back, hiding them from the world outside. Silence wrapped around them, broken only by their breathing. The girl leaned against the wall, her glowing eyes dim, her body trembling. Her chains rattled softly, the sound echoing like ghosts in the empty bay. She sank to the ground, her voice cracked. I cannot run anymore, my legs, they will not move. The human knelt beside her, his chest still heaving from the chase. You do not need to run now, he whispered, his voice steady but low. We are safe for a while. The words felt fragile, as if safety itself could shatter with one sound. Her eyes filled with tears, her small hands clutching the chains at her back. They never let me rest, she whispered. If I slowed, they beat me. If I spoke, they silenced me. Her voice broke as she looked down at her hands. I forgot what it feels like to sit without fear. The human's throat tightened, anger burning inside him. He reached for his bag, pulling out the cutter again. The girl flinched, then froze, her eyes widening. You would try again? Even now? He nodded, his jaw set. As long as I breathe, I will keep trying. Her lips trembled, a sound escaping her that was half a sob and half a laugh. No one had ever promised her such a thing, no one had ever cared enough to try more. And once, he moved behind her, steadying her trembling shoulders with his hand. Hold still, he said gently, and she obeyed, her head lowering. The cutter pressed against the black steel, sparks flying in the dark. The sound echoed through the empty bay. loud but hopeful, the lock groaned, refusing to give in. The human gritted his teeth, his muscles straining. The girl's eyes closed, her lips whispering softly, even if it never breaks, even if I die with these chains, I will remember that you tried. Her words cut deeper than the metal itself. He pressed harder, sweat dripping from his brow, and then, the chain bent, one link snapping slightly. The girl gasped, her whole body shuddering as if a piece of her soul had been freed. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her voice shaking. I felt it, she whispered. I felt them weaken. The human pulled the cutter back, exhausted. We are close, he said firmly. Next time, they will break. Suddenly, the sound of boots echoed outside the bay, voices murmured. Guards searching the docks. The girl froze, panic flooding her eyes. They are here, she whispered. They will find us. They always find me. The human placed a finger gently against her lips. Not this time, he said, his voice steady. He guided her deeper into the shadows. Behind a stack of broken crates, they crouched low, their bodies pressed close as the door creaked open. A guard's shadow stretched across the floor, his steps heavy. The girl's heart raced so fast she thought it would betray them. The human wrapped his arm around her shoulders, holding her still. His warmth steadied her, his calm heartbeat fighting her fear. The guard stepped inside, scanning the bay with a growl. The silence was sharp, every second endless, but after a long moment, he muttered something and turned away. The door groaned shut, and his steps faded into the distance. The girl exhaled shakily, tears still clinging to her eyes. She looked up at the human, her voice raw. You did not just give me shelter, she whispered, you gave me hope. The night air outside the broken bay was colder now. The wind moved through the cracked steel walls, whispering like voices from another world. The human and the alien girl sat quietly, their backs against the cargo crates. The fight was over, for now. But the war was not. The girl's chains still clung to her, but one was gone, one piece of metal, broken and lying on the floor. She stared at it for a long time, her glowing eyes filled with thoughts she could not speak. It was small, but it meant everything. She turned to the human, her voice soft. If we stay, they will come back. He nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on the distant lights beyond the docks. They won't stop until we disappear, or until we're dead. The silence between them stretched. Then she asked, do you regret it? Helping me? The human looked at her, his expression calm but firm. No, he said, not for a single second. Her lips parted slightly, and a breath she'd been holding for years finally escaped. You're strange, she said quietly. You don't see me like they do. He smiled just a little. I see someone who deserves to be free. She touched the remaining chains with her fingers. They built these to never come off. Not without pain, not without fear. He reached over and gently covered her hand with his. Then we'll take them off one by one, together. In the distance, a low siren sounded. One of the ships was preparing to leave. The human stood, helping her to her feet. Her legs were tired, but she didn't fall, not this time. He looked out at the landing pads, counting the guards, watching the shadows. There, he said, pointing to a small ship at the edge of the dock. It's a cargo runner, unguarded, probably leaving in minutes. Her eyes widened. You want to take it? It's not stealing, he said. It's escaping. She nodded, her voice steadier now. Then I'm with you, human, until end. The words felt like a vow, sealed by everything they had survived. They moved together through the shadows, hearts pounding. Every step was dangerous, every second a risk, but their hands were joined now. No longer stranger and slave, now they were something else, something stronger. They reached the runner just as the engines began to glow. The human climbed up first, then pulled her into the ship. Inside, the hum of power greeted them, warm and full of promise. The door sealed behind them with a hiss. The girl collapsed into the seat beside him, her eyes wide. This feels like a dream, she whispered. The human smiled, checking the controls. Then let's make it real. The ship lifted off, engines roaring. Below them, the masters shouted, guards waving useless weapons. Too late, they were already in the sky. She looked out the window, her glowing eyes reflecting the stars. For the first time, she said, I'm looking forward, not back. The human nodded. No more chains, he said, no more running, just choosing where we go next. The stars opened before them, endless and free. The girl leaned her head against his shoulder, her voice a soft whisper. I told you I'd belong to you forever." He placed his hand gently over hers. "And I told you, you're free." They didn't know where the ship would take them, they didn't know what dangers would follow, but they knew one thing. They had each other, and that was enough to fight the entire galaxy, and in the black sky above the world that once held her in chains, an alien girl and a human man disappeared into the stars, not as slave and master, but as something far more powerful, as partners in freedom, as survivors of fire, as the beginning of a story no one would ever forget. The broken bay was filled with silence again, but this silence was not like before. It was heavier, deeper, holding the weight of everything that had just happened. The bodies of the fallen guards lay scattered, the masters gone. For now, the human leaned against a crate, breathing hard. Blood trickled from cuts along his arms, and his clothes were torn, but he was still standing, barely, but still standing. The alien girl sat beside him, her knees pulled to her chest, her chains still rattled softly whenever she moved, but she no longer seemed afraid of the sound. She stared at her hands, still shaking from the dagger she had used. "I didn't know I could fight," she whispered, her voice raw. The human glanced at her, tired but steady. "You did more than fight," he said. "You stood up, you protected, you survived." Her glowing eyes turned toward him, filled with something new, not fear, not pain, something warmer, something stronger, respect, maybe even admiration. "I've always been afraid," she said slowly, "afraid of them, of pain, of what they would do if I disobeyed." She touched the lock still clinging to her back, her fingers gentle. "But now I feel something else." The human leaned forward, curious. She whispered, "I feel like I'm not alone anymore." The words hit him harder than any blade from the fight. She was right, they had crossed something together, a line that could never be erased. He looked at her, really looked at her. Scars, tears, chains, and all, but also strength, fire, and courage. She had fought with him, not behind him, not beneath him, beside him. "You're not alone," he said quietly. "Not anymore." Her lip trembled, and she turned her head away. "I'm not used to hearing that," she admitted. "They always told me I was worthless unless I obeyed." She paused, then added softly, "But you never asked me to obey, you just stood with me." The human reached into his bag, pulling out the cutter once more. Her eyes widened as he moved behind her. "You're going to try again?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. He nodded. "We're almost there, I can feel it." She sat still, her back exposed. His hands moved slowly, gently. Each spark from the cutter lit the space like stars in the dark, and then, with one loud crack, a link gave way. She gasped as it fell to the ground, one chain down, only a few left. Tears spilled from her eyes as she looked at the broken piece. "I didn't think I'd ever see that," she whispered. The human placed the cutter beside him and sat down again. Their shoulders touched lightly. She didn't move away this time. Instead, she rested her head against his arm. "I said I would serve you," she said softly. "But now I don't want to serve. I just want to stay." The words were simple, but they carried power, a bond not made by chains, but by trust, by choice. And that kind of bond couldn't be taken, only given. The human didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. They had fought together, bled together, and now, sat in the dark together, alive, breathing, and finally beginning to understand what it meant to belong. Outside, the stars blinked faintly through the cracked ceiling. The girl looked up, her voice calm for the first time. "Do you think there's a place out there where we can live free?" The human nodded slowly. "There has to be," he said, "and we'll find it." And in that quiet, broken space, with danger still not far away, they made a new kind of bond, not of ownership or survival, but of something deeper, hope. The human's hand shook as it touched the lock. The metal was cold, biting against his skin, as if it carried the weight of every year she had suffered. The alien girl stood very still, her shoulders tight, her breathing fast. No one had dared to stand this close to her before, not with the chains marking her as property. She whispered, "Only a human can open it. Their tools do not work, their strength is not enough, but yours is." Her voice was soft but desperate, like a dying flame begging for air. He looked closer and saw the scars under the chains, the way her skin had been cut and burned. This was not just metal, it was a prison carved into her body. He tried pulling at the lock with his bare hands, but it would not move. It was built from alien steel, harder than anything he had handled in his workshop. The girl winced but did not cry out. Instead she whispered again, "Do not stop. Even pain is better than this." Her words stabbed him deeper than the sight of her wounds. The market's noise seemed to fade as his heart pounded louder. Every second they stood there was dangerous. If the guards returned, if someone noticed, the two of them would be finished. Still, his grip tightened, as if his strength alone could defy her fate. Why me? He asked under his breath, his voice breaking. Her glowing eyes turned back to him, trembling with tears. Because no alien sees me as alive anymore, she said. But you looked at me, not at my chains. The words hit him like a blade, because he had not even realized what he had shown in his eyes. He searched his bag quickly, pulling out a human tool he had brought for repairs. It was a simple steel cutter, not meant for alien locks, but maybe, just maybe, human design could fight alien cruelty. He slid it carefully behind her back, trying to break the first link. The sound of scraping metal echoed faintly, sharp in the queue. Yui had air. She held her breath, her body trembling as if the whole world rested on that moment. He whispered, "Stay still," and she nodded quickly, her head bent forward. The tool sparked, the lock resisted, but he kept pressing harder. From the corner of his eye, he caught sight of shadows moving. 2 alien guards patrolled nearby, scanning the crowd. If they saw him with her, it would be the end. His chest tightened. His hands moved faster, even as sweat dripped from his face. The girl gasped when a link bent slightly, not enough to break, but enough to give hope. Her whisper rushed out, "Yes, keep going, please, do not stop now." He pressed harder, ignoring the burning in his arms, ignoring the fear in his chest. He was not just freeing her body, he realized. He was tearing apart years of her suffering. The guards' voices grew louder, their heavy steps echoing closer. One more push, one more strike of strength, he thought. The chain groaned, bent, and then cracked. Her breath hitched, her knees almost buckled, but she caught herself. For the first time, the lock was weaker than her will, but the noise had been too loud. One guard turned, eyes narrowing. The human dropped the cutter into his bag and pulled her cloak over her back, hiding the damage. "Stay close," he whispered quickly. "Do not look at them." The alien girl lowered her head, her cloak hiding her face. Her voice trembled with both fear and excitement. "You touched the chains. They are breaking. I can feel it." He gave the smallest nod, not daring to show more. Inside him, the fire burned stronger. He had started something he could not stop now. The guards walked past, their eyes sweeping over the crowd. The human kept his body calm, even though his heart raced. Beside him, the girl pressed closer, her tiny hands gripping his sleeve again. She whispered one last time, so quiet only he could hear, "D. Oh, it again later, from behind, until I am free. I belong to you now." The first guard lunged, his blade flashing in the light. The human dodged quickly, pulling the alien girl behind him. The crowd screamed and scattered, merchants grabbing their goods, children running into narrow streets. Chaos spread like fire, and the human knew this was their only chance to escape. He shoved a broken crate into the guard's path, buying a moment. "Run," he whispered to the girl, but her small feet struggled to keep up. Her chains slowed her, the metal rattling with every step. Still, she clung to his sleeve, refusing to let go. The market was a maze of stalls, narrow alleys, and shouting voices. Guards pushed through the crowd, their whips snapping, their weapons raised. The masters shouted orders from behind, their fury echoing, "Catch them alive. The human will suffer, and the girl will pay double." The human's breath came fast, his eyes scanning for a way out. He saw a gap between 2 tall buildings, half hidden by hanging cloth. "Here," he said, dragging her through, their bodies brushing against stone and shadow. The alley smelled of smoke and damp earth, but it was shelter for a moment. The girl gasped for breath, her eyes wide with fear. "They will never stop," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They will hunt us until we are broken." The human bent down, meeting her gaze, his own voice fierce. "Then we keep running until they cannot reach us." Shouts grew louder behind them, heavy boots pounding closer. The human grabbed a fallen wooden pole, gripping it like a weapon. If they were caught here, there would be no escape, but he refused to let the chains take her again. He swung the pole at the first guard who entered the alley. The impact cracked against armor, the guard stumbling back. The girl gasped, seeing the human fight not with fear, but with fire. "Come on," he said quickly, pulling her deeper into the winding paths. They burst back into the open market, the smell of roasted meat and burning oil filling the air. Merchants shouted angrily as their stalls were knocked aside. The human's heart pounded, every turn leading them closer to freedom, or into a trap. The girl stumbled once, nearly falling, but he caught her before she hit the ground. Her glowing eyes looked up at him, desperate. "I will not slow you," she cried, "leave me and live." But he shook his head sharply, his grip tightening on her hand. "Never, I will not abandon you." A roar echoed behind them, more guards entering from another side. The master's voices rose, cruel and sharp. "Do not let them escape. Bring me the human's head." The crowd scattered again, fear spreading like smoke. The humans spotted a ramp leading toward the docks. Ships towered above the market, their engines rumbling, their shadows stretching long. If they reached the docks, maybe they could hide, maybe even steal a way out. "Faster," he urged, pulling her toward the ramp, blade sliced the air, whips cracked just inches away. The girl cried out as sparks flew when a whip struck stone beside her. The human pulled her close, shielding her with his body as they ran. Every muscle in his body burned, but he refused to stop. They reached the docks, the sound of engines roaring around them. Cargo crates towered like walls, shadows deep and dark. For a moment, the human thought they had a chance, but then he heard the echo of boots again, guards pouring into the docks from every side. The girl's chains rattled softly, her voice breaking. "There is nowhere left to run," she whispered, her tears falling. The human looked around, his jaw tight, his heart fierce. "Then we do not run," he said, gripping the pole tighter. "We fight." Her glowing eyes widened, fear and hope battling inside her. The master's wrath had driven them this far, but now a new fire burned between them. Together, cornered in the shadows of the great ships, they would either fall or carve their freedom out of the chains.